Hey, I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain. In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the clutch plates on your KTM, Husky, or GasGas 65cc dirt bike. The clutch plates on these bikes take a lot of abuse and they do wear out from time to time. Now, if you suspect your clutch is on its way out, a good way to test for that is when you're cruising along, you can whack the throttle. If the RPM comes up, but the bike doesn't accelerate, then chances are your clutch plates are slipping. So you need to get in there, inspect them, and probably replace them. So we're going to show you how to do that on this 2015 KTM 65SX. The process is going to be similar for any late model KTM or Husky 65cc dirt bike, as well as the new GasGas 65. Now, whatever bike you're working on, you want to refer to your model specific service manual for any minor differences, more information, and specs. As far as parts go, you can get OEM and aftermarket parts on our website. So we went with the Tusk Competition Clutch Kit. This has the aramid fibers. These are really nice and durable. And then it also comes with those steels. And then we also got a clutch cover gasket. And anytime you're changing these clutch plates out, you're probably going to have a bunch of that fiber material down in your oil. So you want to get it changed out. We got some fresh oil, some oil change stuff, and some contact cleaner to help clean everything up. To do this job, we're going to use safety glasses, rags, some rubber gloves. We have assembly lube. You can just use some oil, but we're also using Loctite, a little bit of mechanics wire or safety wire, and just common hand tools. So we have our torque wrench, a couple different sockets, Allen key, and then we're also using a spring puller, pick, and then, for the specialty stuff, you need a clutch holding tool. This one is actually for flywheels, but it's going to work fine. If you want, you can get the KTM special tool. And then we're also using our digital calipers. All right, first thing we need to do is drain that engine oil out. So we're going to lift up on the shift lever and remove the drain bolt. Then we'll clean the sealing surface, the drain bolt, and reinstall the drain bolt with a new sealing washer. Now I'm going to get this brake pedal out of my way so we can remove this cover. So we'll pull up on that spring, release it. Then we have this bolt back here. We're going to remove it. Then from here we need to remove the clutch cover. So this slave cylinder, we're actually going to leave this on. And we do have a drain pan underneath this cover. We're going to loosen these bolts in a crisscross pattern. These bolts, most of them are different sizes, so just keep track of them. But if you forget, we'll show you how they go or their orientation later on. And we're just going to pull on that cover. It should come right off. And we're just going to use some mechanics wire to keep that up and out of the way. Now we can remove the pressure piece. And at this point, we need to remove the whole clutch pack. So we're going to have to loosen up that center bolt. This one actually already is. That's not good. But with it, we're going to, if this was still tight, you'd just use a clutch holding tool. We're still going to show you how to do that. Most of the time, how you're going to take this off is either use an impact gun. You can pull that bolt out, or you can buy the KTM special tool. It has 3 pins in it and holds the clutch secure while you loosen that center bolt. But for us, this is something a lot of people are already going to have. This is the flywheel pin spanner. This one's from Tusk, and we're just going to use 2 of the pins in the holes and adjust the tool so it's tight in there. And we can go ahead and loosen the bolt. Okay, with this bolt loose, we're actually going to remove the whole clutch pack. There's a couple things you need to keep in mind. So this basket is coming with it. Now we've got a couple bearings and a collar back here, so make sure you pay attention to those. Make sure you don't lose them. Then we'll take the whole basket over to the bench. Now we need to remove these 6 bolts that hold on the spring retainer. The best way to do it is just by hand, hold the whole basket and break them loose. But they're pretty tight. If you do use an impact, just make sure you have a really good bite with your bit, because these are real easy to strip out. And we can take off all the springs. Now we can remove this inner clutch hub. It looks like our plates are actually stuck to it. We've got that washer on the end, make sure you don't lose that. Then from here, we're just going to clean up all these clutch pieces before we inspect them. Once you have all your parts cleaned, we can start with some measurements for inspection. So I'm going to measure these springs first. Now the minimum on these springs, or the standard for them, is going to be 21.5 to 21.9 millimeters. We're 21.7. You know, if you're below 21.5, you're going to want to replace all the springs. So go through and check them all. Looks like we're looking pretty good. And then from there, we can measure the friction material on this friction disc. Now, the friction material for our bike needs to be 1.8 millimeters or thicker. So you can check these in a couple spots to make sure your reading's good. Now, we're 1.73 millimeters, so we know these plates need to be replaced. Now, the other thing with these, if you saw a bunch of friction material all over your clutches, or if these smell really burned, then you know you just need to get in there and replace these plates. The other thing you can look for is on the steels. If you see any signs of bluing, then you know those are going to be warped. So you can see some little bit of discoloration on this one, 3 different spots. I don't know if the glare is going to make that hard to see. But again, any discoloration or bluing, you're going to want to replace the whole clutch pack. From here, we're going to move on to the visual inspection. So you can see this clutch basket, you know, there's some pretty deep grooves in it. And just to see how bad it is, you can actually take a plate and run it up and down in there. And if it catches pretty bad, then you're definitely going to want to get the clutch basket replaced. That's the case with ours. The other thing you want to check on the basket, you have this gear on the back. You want to hold on to that and the basket and see if you can rotate them. If there's any play in there, you want to replace the whole assembly. But we don't have any play, so we're just going to go with an aftermarket basket and get that put on. We're doing a separate video, so if you need to know how to do that, check that out. Now, the other thing, we have this pressure plate. You need to check this friction surface for any visible damage or grooving. You know, we have a pretty deep groove in it, so we're going to replace this piece. Now for that inner clutch hub, you want to make some similar inspections. So you want to inspect that friction surface all the way around. Just check for any visible damage or grooving. This one's looking good. And then you want to check the splines for grooving as well. So these ones, you know, you can see some marks, but the grooves aren't deep. And if you had any concerns, you could get one of those steel plates, slide it up and down and feel for grooves. But this one's looking fine, so we're actually going to reuse it. All right, we have all our new parts. Now we need to pre-assemble the clutch pack. So first thing I'm going to do is get some oil on these friction discs. So I'm just using a Ziploc bag. This one came with our clutch cover gasket. And this way we don't use a ton of oil doing this. So once you have oil all over these plates, what we're going to do is start with a friction disc. Then we'll install it onto that inner clutch hub. And then we're going to install a steel. Now, with these steels, typically there's going to be a sharp edge and a rounded edge. Doesn't matter which side you put on, just keep them all in the same orientation. So I'm just going to take one right off the top, set it in place, and then we're going to alternate fibers and steels until we're at the top. And these little tabs on the fibers, we're going to line all those up going all the way to the top. I'm going to install the pressure plate, putting a little oil on that as well. Make sure that sits all the way down. You have those splines on the pressure plate that line up with the hub. So once that's on there, we'll flip this over and we can install these springs. Set the spring retainer in plate, and then we're going to install these screws, but we're not going to tighten them down all the way yet. And that way, if we need to move any of these plates, we still can. All right, just in case your guys' collar and bearings came off, we're going to start from the bottom. Now, if you notice any clutch material in here, make sure you get it cleaned out. And then, you know, this input shaft for your transmission, make sure those threads inside of that are clean. We sprayed it out with some contact cleaner. And then what you're going to want to do is use fresh oil or assembly lube on that collar. And we'll apply some to these bearings. And we'll take the clutch basket, put some assembly lube on it. Now we can install the clutch basket. Keep in mind that these gears need to mesh, so you're probably going to have to rotate the basket to get everything lined up. There we go. It's all the way on. And yeah, just verify that you can see that collar right next to the basket. That's how you know you're all the way down. After that, we've got our washer. We're going to lube that up as well. And then we can install the clutch pack. So the next thing we're going to need to do is get the spring retainer flush with the clutch hub. We're not going to torque these bolts yet, but we need to do this so we can use our clutch holding tool. Now I'm just going to apply some low strength thread lock to this bolt. And then we're going to torque it to 44.3 foot-pounds. Okay, from here, I'm just shifting the bike into second gear, and we're gonna torque these spring retainer bolts to 7.4 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. And from here, we're gonna install a new clutch cover gasket. Now that O-ring, we don't necessarily need to replace it every time, but it's just good, cheap insurance, so we're going to. And then, you know, right by the slave cylinder or in this cover, again, if you see any clutch material, make sure it's all cleaned out. Then we have our pressure piece, and we're going to reinstall the cover. And all these bolts, they're going to be torqued to 7.4 foot-pounds, again in a crisscross pattern. And then keep in mind you have the 2 dowel pins, make sure those are still there. Now I do want to point out that this cover, we kind of had to press it into place because that piston on the cylinder was pushed out just a little bit. So when we put it on, we're just pushing that back in. Okay, so we have the 2 longer bolts. If you don't remember, they went in the front. Next, we have the medium bolt. That's the back corner. And then a shorter one on top and a shorter one on bottom. All these bolts, they're going to be torqued to 7.4 foot-pounds, again in a crisscross pattern. All right, now we're ready to reconnect our spring and then our brake pedal bolt. Now all we have left to do is add 0.5 liters of oil, or 500 cc's. That's all there is to replacing the clutch plates on these 65s. If you need any of the parts for your bike, we have a lot of different options on our website. So check that out, and you can subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks for watching.